by Grayson Fulbright, email copywriting and prospecting mastermind. It is episode 5278, Monday morning, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Welcome. We have a really great email to get into. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe on YouTube, follow on LinkedIn, SD Revolution. You can connect with Grayson or myself and send us your cold emails. We would love to look at them, read them on the show. You can even come on here and talk about them with us. We would love to open the conversation up. So, really excited. Let's jump into the email. All right. This week's email was brought to us by our good friend AJ Alonso at Demand Drive. And so, just to put everyone into the mindset here, you're prospecting into a director level of marketing for a small to mid-sized company. It says, "Hey AJ, I'm salesperson. Last year, I became one of the country's youngest film directors when my debut feature film name was released in theaters. I've been working on animated projects for companies like your company, so I thought I'd touch base to see if there's anything I can help you out with video-wise. They'd make great explainer videos for your company site, or they'd make great explainer videos for the site. And they're a great way to communicate with clients and staff during lockdown, or a great way to visualize case studies. Each video is charged at just $1,099. If you'd like to see our work, we're over at the company. Let me know if I can be of any help. Would love to chat. Salesperson. Film director, former hot tub salesman, and always on the naughty step. P.S. If you don't want to hear from me anymore, just let me know." Okay. So let's get down into it. As always, everyone wants to take a look. Here's our color codes. Orange is the seller talking about themselves typically. Blue is much more persona based, and you get into yellow as pain, and pink and purple as storytelling and incentive/value. So I want to get into this email a lot. Immediately, the cliche of cold email, lots of orange, right, Grayson?
Yeah. And I think mixed with assumptions too, which is the light blue. And I think that's never a good pairing to talk about yourself while also, making assumptions on the people you're reaching out to, especially ones that are very deep claims. Like they make great explainer videos for your site. I think that is much riskier than just saying I've worked on some animated projects for companies like Company.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree that sellers talking about themselves and assumptions pair like pineapple and okra, not well. So if you look here, you're right. There's a couple of things going on. So I do like him talking about his feature film. It comes off a little presumptuous. However, I think that's good social proof and some credibility. I just think it needs to be put in a better context. I think that could be good. That's an element that I think could be good. It's just deployed poorly. If you notice, it's all orange at the beginning. He led with that, and so I think that's a big problem there. And then you look at, as you go into the blue, like assumptions, you start to say, hey, they make good explainer videos. I really like leading with problems instead of leading with solutions, because if I'm not looking for explainer videos, then maybe I don't reply to you. But if I'm looking for video production for something else that's not an explainer video, maybe you get the meeting. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the problem with this one is just why these assumptions are being used. Like there's a difference between saying, companies like yours likely need videos like this to improve communication. That's something that can be defended, and that's something that doesn't necessarily rely on the trust that recipient has with you. But in these assumptions, he really is kind of like pushing forward on that trust And when you say that, like, they would, this thing I'm trying to sell you would make a really good solution for you specifically, the first thing that they're going to think about is not what you just said. And they're not going to think about, oh, you're right, like explainer videos would be good. They're going to think like, how do you know? Like, I've never met you before. I've never seen you before. You've obviously never connected with me before. So making those types of assumptions can do the opposite effect. And instead of making people curious, instead of making people kind of reflect on the situation, you can kind of put up those like defensive, like stranger danger reactions that you often get from buyers. They're like, oh no, I'm not interested. Like, you're obviously trying to sell me something. There's no authenticity here. Go away. And I think, to be honest, I would have removed those assumptions because they're really dangerous there. I think as orange as this email is in the first two lines, it's not that bad. If he would have removed these dangerous assumptions, I feel like he would have gotten a lot more responses, because at the very least, it's taking pressure off of buyers that are reading this. They're not feeling like they're going to have to like get in an argument or like think deeply about whether they should trust that this video from this specific video producer would be a great fit for their site compared to, I'm sure, the hundreds of other video producers that probably reach out.
The other thing to note is putting the price in the email. So I do think that $1,099 is a good price. It's not a great price, but it's a good price. The other thing is, yeah, I do agree with you that the orange at the beginning isn't the worst part of the email. I think it's all right. Although, again, I said in context, I think it could be better. But the assumptions, you're right. They do put you on the defensive. As I'm reading this, I feel like this video, or the purpose for the video production, is really getting pushed into me as instead of me offering it. And I think that is the big difference between like beginning SDRs or newer salespeople and more experienced salespeople. Is more experienced salespeople, people that have more business acumen and have skill and been in more deals and perhaps been in larger deals, they find ways and word things such that the prospect volunteers, or the prospect is the one offering up the information. The prospect is the one making the conclusions on how to allocate or apply a solution or a problem in a conversation. You have to get the prospect, and we talked about this a lot, but you have to get the prospect thinking about themselves, but you also have to get the prospect to take the action. It's just a very low skill platform to be on when you have the prospect, when you're the one giving everything to the prospect and you're just waiting for the prospect to say yes or no. A true salesperson gets the prospect to open up, and the salesperson leads them in the sales process, but ultimately this, at least what I find, is the prospect is the one that's making the sale and making the conclusions.
Yeah, I agree. And I think to kind of go further down into the email, I think that this email is a perfect example of people who misunderstand like direct sales channels and think of kind of these cold touches as, quote, magic bullets that, if done to the right person in the right way, one touch and they're sold. And I think that's shown here in the way his language is. He's very, like you said, yes, no, presumptuous. He's like, I am great. I think this would be great for you. Would you like it or not? And then I think the second piece is the pricing. You want to put pricing into a cold touch like this. Maybe if it's like a low dollar item, it's some sort of like trial that's do it yourself, that has an automated sales funnel set up to kind of like take that. But if you're doing direct sales, if you're talking to people and you have to like carry them through your sales process, why would you, on the very first touch, include pricing? Every additional thing that you add in an email will decrease the likelihood that somebody is going to respond, especially if it's something like pricing. Because let's just like play an exercise here. Let's say I read through this whole email, and up until that point, I'm sold. I'm like, oh yeah, I think it would be a great explainer video. I do think it would help me communicate with my clients and staff. And then they get to the pricing, and now all of a sudden, it's not just about the topic anymore. It's not about, oh, explainer videos could be good for your company, let's talk. Now there are like buyers are already in a position to where they're thinking about how that sale would play out. Like, is that the right budget? Could I find someone for cheaper? How does your quality compare if I went to another person and paid the same price? Like, when do I need this? Is it that urgent? What does the timeline look like? I feel like when you add pricing, especially in a kind of a cold or like a first touch, it puts people's guards up, and kind of it's also a little bit, I think, amateurish, because you mentioned business acumen, right? And most buyers, most sellers, they know that it's going to take a process. It's going to be a journey. And so if you're boom right out the gate trying to like talk about pricing, you either A, have a low price product, B, you're super duper confident, or C, you probably don't really understand how the deal is going to work. And that actually makes buyers lose confidence, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so as you've been talking, I've been thinking this email is either poorly written or really well written based on how you're looking at it. So there could be a couple things going on here. One, you see a lot of creative professionals or technicians, people that are the business. For example, if you're a plumber, you probably aren't super expert in developing your business. You're really good at plumbing or whatever, right? These traps for technicians or creative professionals. If you're a graphic designer, if you're a filmmaker, maybe you're watching this as a graphic designer or filmmaker and you're like, hey, I want more clients. They fall into the trap of selling how they've been sold to, or how they find on, in some guide, or a lot of times I think it's they sell how they would communicate what they sell, which is a trap. But the other thing that I think this email actually does well, and I think maybe this person's strategy, is they're looking for somebody in market right now or somebody that has possibly considered video production before but wouldn't do it because the price was too high. And the reason I say this is he or she leads with what they believe is credibility. So enough credibility to get them considered, okay, you've put out a feature film. You must know how to make videos to some extent. Next, they go into, hey, if you're looking for an explainer video or this or this. So these are, and by the way, I'm in video production a little bit. So these are what could be lower difficulty to produce, right? The barrier to entry isn't super high. You're not going to need a whole big team. You're not going to need a film studio. You can go with a camera, maybe 2 cameras, and a couple of guys and film this and be done. So you can definitely do it for $1,099 or less. And so I think what this may be doing is this is just an email meant to just hack out the low-hanging fruit and grab what, somebody that's either a little desperate or just trying to get some easy, quick deals. Or what I think is more likely happening is this is a technician, a skilled creative person who doesn't understand the B2B prospecting environment, like especially at a director level of a company doing 5, 10, 20 million a year in revenue, or 30 in revenue, or more. So
yeah, I think those are good points, and that is something to consider. That we're looking at this email, but we don't really know what the results are, or like who this person is targeting. So it's very likely that this could be a strategy that is kind of designed just to get quick wins when kind of like an individual contributor, like a consultant or some sort of freelancer, is ready to get more clients. And I think,
and I still disagree with the approach, by the way.
Right.
I still think you can have you can still be an individual contributor or a consultant, and you can have good salesmanship.
Yeah, but I do think that, reflecting back on what you said, I think this is a strategy. This is a strategy that people often use when they need to be very efficient in how much time they spend on actually generating revenue, especially if they're, their own business and they're trying to figure out a system while still delivering the services. And so it'll usually come in this format. Very, very informational heavy, just like we talk about with those landing page type messaging, so that the prospect knows. And then straight into the pitch to try to see if they can actually generate business. I think the only thing they missed out on with that strategy is unclear CTA. I think they had three different lines where a CTA could be had, and if you're going to go with that strategy, you're going to go with kind of like finding quick wins, just soft touching to see if someone wants to buy or not. Then you need to really be clear in what you're asking for. I feel like, let me know if I can be of any help doesn't really leave me anywhere, even if I wanted to talk to them, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could have had a soft ask at least about videos. Are you considering video production right now, or what video needs do you have? I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Even if you didn't want to go hard ask, like when's 15 minutes we can discuss your video needs, you could have some kind of relevant CTA. Yeah, like let me know if I can be of any help. Now, obviously, it would be about video because he's a director and he's been talking about videos in the whole email. But I will say the CTA is weak. You do make a really good point there. Let me know if I can be of any help. Would love to chat. Like it's nice, but we're not going to go hang out at Starbucks. Like,
right.
What do you want me to do? That's a good point. All right, should we get into the rewrite here?
Let's do it.
Scroll down here. Whoop. There we go. Okay, here we go. Does the digital work environment reduce employee engagement, productivity, and motivation? Isolation at home is an ongoing professional obstacle, and many digitally managed teams are starving for better communication and idea flow. However, a recent study from Doxy found that an average user retained 8.5 times more of a message with video versus a text-based format. Your company has a sizable team that likely demands efficient communication, so I'm hoping to share a few video assets I've made for similar orgs to help keep their digital teams engaged. Could I send those over to see if it makes sense to connect further? Nice. I really like this rewrite. I think you've done a bunch of rewrites, and I've liked all of them. But there are like 2 or 3 things out of this rewrite that make it my favorite rewrite so far. So the first thing here is your purple and yellow at the beginning. Those are complementary colors, and they look great together. But they also go well in the email together. So the painting, you lead with the question, which is a great way to hook attention, and then you really paint the situation, right? Like if somebody's read this far, if somebody reads that second line and they decide to keep reading, it's because to some degree they probably resonate with that problem, or they're at least curious about it. So I think you did a really good job hooking people in and setting them up for a reply. Another thing is that you have that study that cites a powerful statistic. And then I love the very last part. It's my favorite. I would hit reply instantly and say, yeah, send them over. Because you said you've made some videos for similar companies, and that would solve the problems that you were talking about. And I think this is a really good way to start a conversation. I try to drill this into my reps' heads. Is like, guys, people. There are a lot of ways to have conversations. There's so many different avenues to have a natural feeling conversation, and this rewrite just feels like it flows so well.
Thanks, Austin. To kind of explain my homework a little bit, I keep in mind like this is not an easy space to really sell into. Videos
Video production's competitive.
It's not only is it competitive, but it sometimes can be perceived as a commodity depending on the organization. And
Yep.
What I did with this email at the very beginning is I chose one of the topics that the original email had. I think one of his issues that we didn't really cover is the fact that he kind of like went into a bunch of different kind of like topics that are either benefits or things to think about. And that can often overwhelm people. Even if they're interested, it's just too much information. And so I chose employee engagement as like my sole topic. So my entire email was about that rather than talking about video, right? We get into it. We talk about why video relates to employee engagement and to keeping digital teams productive, but that's not the main thing. And I think that's one of the biggest changes I made in this rewrite, is trying to flip the focus to not be about I'm a video producer and here's what I've done and do you want a video, but trying to actually paint the picture, like you said, of the problems that people often experience right before they decide that they need videos in their organization. And so, I'm not a practitioner of video. I found this stat with a quick Google search to kind of help with my messaging, but the core of it's very, very simple. It's telling a story that has a pain inside it, and then showing them some stat or some revelation. Sorry, I messed that up twice. Revelation about a future state that is good for them. And so that's what I did. I said, hey, my first line, my question, I don't really know the answer to it. That's kind of why I wrote it. I was like, this seems like it'd catch attention. Like, does it? Who knows? I'm sure that's controversial, right? And then I go straight into a pain, so that if it is coming with negative connotation, if someone's reading that question of being like, yes, and let me tell you why, well, then that second line that goes in pains, that's going to resonate with them. And they're going to be like, yeah, it is an obstacle. Yes, they are starving for communication. And then finally, every story needs a good resolution, a good wrap up. And so the study kind of comes in and it's not me, even though I'm the seller, I'm not being the hero here. I'm bringing a study to show them a future state that video can provide. It's kind of like a good ending or an alternative ending to the story. And then I wrap it back around to them. I think the last thing I'd point out is, like, I don't really mention them or me until the very end, because I don't want them to focus on me. I don't want them to think that it's a selling email. I just want them to read it and see if it actually resonates with them.
So there were a lot of areas touched on there, but you're right. In the original email, they did cite like 3 different use cases for the videos that they can make. And I like that you put one topic in there, because guess what? The other 2 topics are good for other steps in the sequence. Those should be other emails. And they'll have different statistics, they'll have different studies, they'll have different, it'll have a different story to it. So I do think that's a trap people fall into that you remedied here, is that you told one story. Don't try to tell too many stories at once. The another part that I really like about it is, that's right, your question. You said something where you're like, I don't know, it could be controversial. Controversy is good. And I don't mean controversy like get banned from Twitter controversy. I mean controversy like polarizing, like people have to agree or disagree. There's no middle ground. Because that's intellectually interesting to human beings. If you're creating content of any kind, and don't kid yourself, writing cold emails is creating content. Controversy is much more interesting. Even if I disagree with you, I may email you back and get a reply and say, hey, I disagree, I think you're wrong. Because of this, right? I don't think I need your video.
That's much more valuable to a sales org than them reading it and never replying. And then you never knowing if they thought that, never knowing if they even read your email and cared. So like any response is a good response, other than something professionally unproductive or an unsubscribe.
Yeah, 10,000%. I agree with you. So that controversy is so, like when you said that word controversy, I was like, ooh, I agree with this so passionately. Is you have to remember that most of the cold email that gets written that isn't good is either irrelevant or boring to some degree. So be interesting by taking a stance, right? Your company must have some position on the problems you solve, that in being biased, that the way your company solves it is the best way to solve it. Otherwise, they would have solved it a different way, or written the software to solve a problem a certain way versus another way. And you know what I mean? Or perhaps, you make you don't make explainer videos, you make whiteboard videos. I don't know. So you just take a stance, and don't be ashamed of taking the stance being confident in what your company offers. If you're not confident in what your company offers, I would start looking for another position where you are, because that's going to destroy your success in sales. I think if you're not confident or believe in what you're selling, that's my personal gospel, but you know, it's where I stand.
Yeah, yeah. I think you made a good point. To kind of go to the core here, I think it's telling a journey that is self-qualifying, and I think something that's measurable. Because I think the question, I didn't really make it to take a stance, but I did make it to have people think, because I think that's a hot topic. Even though people are done with the work from home content, that's still a good question. Most orgs are either totally transitioning to digital, kind of trying to just wait it out and split between digital and office. Some are trying to force reopen and trying their best to go back to the office. And I think it's all about keeping people uh, keeping people engaged, but on something other than like me as the seller or my brand. And I think that's exactly what I tried to do. If the right person is reading that email, they don't hear anything about me until the second half of the almost the last line. And I think that's how it should be, because I know, based on how I've written this, that if someone does respond in a way that I think is like worth following up with a conversation, then I already know something about them. I know that they likely read this, and I know that if they responded enough to want to continue a conversation or see those video assets that I just offered, then they agree somewhat with this. Or, like you said, maybe they don't agree, but it's something that they're willing to like talk about, or something that's like sparked interest. And I think that's the beauty of sales. You're not ever going to find a buyer in the same position every time. They're in various stages. People are people. They have their own opinions. And so writing emails like this, especially if you don't use dangerous assumptions and instead just tell stories, you can get people to kind of like qualify themselves outward to you and say like, hey, even though I'm not interested, I just wanted to say like that was good advice. Do you have a link to that Doxy case study? Okay, great. Like as an SDR or as an org trying to generate pipeline, that's good for me. That's much better than spitting an informational, giving you the pricing and saying yes, no, and then leave it at that, right?
Yeah, and you said something there that's awesome. So when you said they reply back, say, hey, no, I disagree, we did this way. A lot of times I think in as an SDR, what you'll run into is, no, we've tried it X way. You know, we've tried going down this path. And a lot of times you can leverage the weight of that objection of, hey, we tried it this way, against the prospect, in a sense that you can say, hey, well, if you've tried going down this route, what were some of the things that stopped you as a company? Now you're kind of on a disqualifying track. All right, they said they've tried doing it. So for example, for us, if we were looking at a sales engagement platform, like, oh, well, we tried to implement something. Oh, well, why didn't you? Oh, well, because it's not compatible with our VoIP system. Our CRM doesn't integrate. The technical things. If there's things that will literally make it impossible for if you're selling software to implement, well, then not to waste your time there. But you've at least had the conversation, and then you can put in your CRM, hey, they use this CRM, they use this VoIP system that's not compatible, and then if you build out integrations in the future, you can reach out. I think people write their cold emails too often, just trying to get any yeses, instead of, like you said, the right people will reply to this. The right people will read it and say, yes, let's talk, or no, let's not. And just getting information and having conversations and interacting with people is way more valuable than the mass spam stuff that just trying to get any yes you can, that ultimately doesn't get you any information that's really valuable. Because at least in like our market, there's only so many accounts. So to just blast everybody with emails would be more detrimental than good. And I think you write emails in a way that really facilitates good conversation and good intelligence gathering. Because just because they're not in market today, or they have a certain CRM or a certain HCM or whatever system in place today, doesn't mean they will 6 months or a year from now. And if you're still in the job and they switch and they become qualified, that could be a deal a year from now. So don't be short-sighted. I think that's all the time we got for today. What an email. What a show.
What an email.
All right. So again, subscribe here on YouTube, connect on LinkedIn, send us your stuff. And again, we'll be back next week, Monday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Grayson and I. I think next week's show is actually going to be a special one. We have a special guest joining us. Stay tuned for that. I may be early on that. I'm not sure. Can't remember. I'm not looking at my calendar. But follow SD Revolution and you'll get all the deets. But no matter what, we will be here 11:30 a.m. next week. See you then.
One thing, I do believe next week is Labor Day for this coming Monday. So we will actually, I believe we will be live next week on Tuesday at 11:30, just for the special holiday, and then we'll be back on the weekly Monday track.
Excellent. Good note. Tuesday.
Awesome.
We will not be here Monday. We will be here Tuesday. Come back Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. next week. Here in the United States, we celebrate Labor Day, so we're off. Hopefully all of you will enjoy your Labor Day or your Monday, wherever you are. And we'll see you Tuesday.